fronteras. Okay, esto es una conceptualización de transmisión de información e intercambio entre la universidad y invitados especiales como el doctor Kenneth Alston, quien hoy nos acompaña desde los Estados Unidos. Ha sido speaker en una cantidad de otras universidades. No les voy a dar un gran extenso porque es tan largo que me tocó traer apuntes. Okay, entonces, de todas maneras, es uno de estos speakers súper importantes. Esperemos que puedan participar. Acuérdense, las preguntas es una forma interactiva de mantenerse. Welcome to today's program, which is Coffee Across the Borders, literally translated, Café sin fronteras. This is an important mechanism that this university does to create other forms of relating with people from outside, transmitting information, and being active on the networks. We have today Kenneth Alston. Welcome to Colombia. Okay, he will be presenting in English. At the end of the presentation, if you please ask if anyone has problems with English, I will serve as your translator. Please welcome him to the university.
Thank you very much. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I have a very long presentation and we have a short time, so I will go quite quickly and maybe skip over some slides. This is part of a presentation I gave yesterday at Universidad del Bosque, and it's really just beginning to open our minds about a new way of looking at how we live and work. And I hope as it becomes clear as I go through the slides. So I found this quote from one of your famous writers, which I think is very appropriate. Here in English, we don't have another world in which to move to. I started with the slide with the picture of the planet. We only have one planet, but the way we are living and working, we are using resources and energy and having an effect on the world which is not sustainable. With the size of the population of the world and everyone wanting to have a better quality of life, the way we are living today is just not, the earth is not capable of withstanding the way we do it. So we have to find a new way. So here are a few pictures of me. I've been doing this work for quite a long time. I found this very old slide of me from 30 years ago when I was first working on some green products. And here we are 30 years later, and we're still talking about the same thing. And this is part of the problem, that we are too slow in changing the way we think about how we live and how we work. And as I've done this work all over the world, we talk about this word sustainability, and I will define it in a minute. But in the end, all sustainability is local. We are here in Bogota, and so it doesn't matter if the chairs or the table or the lights were made in China or in Germany. In the end, they are here. And so what happens to those materials next is right here in Bogota. So sustainability becomes a local question, even though it is part of the global economy. And so places are important. Places provide a context in which to think about all of these things. This is a picture of the United Kingdom, which is where I was born. And the little marker is showing a city called Preston, which probably no one here has ever heard of. But in a way, it is quite famous in a historical context. This guy was born in that city about 220 years before I was. His name is Arkwright, Richard Arkwright, and he is famous in history for inventing this. This is called a water frame. And it's the first time we began to make machines to do work for us. In the very early days, we would use wool and cotton, and we would spin the cotton threads by hand. And it was all done as a manual job. This guy found a way to take the movement of the current in the river using a water wheel and then link it to this device to start spinning with energy from the movement of the river. And this is the beginnings of what we now call the Industrial Revolution. And so then we invented steam engine, and we started to burn wood and coal, and we could add more power to how we made things. And so now we start seeing the rise of factories with chimneys, and you notice there are all smoke coming out of the top, which is now why we have this problem of global warming. We've been burning things and making carbon dioxide go into the atmosphere. And now we have global warming, which is a major worldwide problem. And then the mechanization got more and more intense. And these pictures are actually from a factory in Preston where my father worked, and then where I had my first job. And then a few years ago, this factory closed because the work went from the United Kingdom out to Indonesia. It was cheaper to make these fibers in a different country with lower wages. And so you can imagine the social impact on my city when this factory closed. My father lost his job. And this has an impact. And this is happening today, every day, all around the world. Some industries are opening, some are closing, some are moving from one place to another. So all these things have an impact, and it's all driven by the global economy. Oh, sorry. Where am I here? So we have this situation where so many things are in a bad way. You know, we have the Amazon is on fire as we speak. We have global warming. Here we have some people who are protesting that in Washington, D.C., close to where I now live in the United States, there is no action at all on climate change, which is, to me, it's criminal. So why? The climate is changing. Why aren't we? We have to change. And then this is a picture from Guatemala City. I was there last year, and this big white area you see in the corner, you can see because it's a shot from space, it's huge. This is the waste dump, Basuero. This is not the way we should be living and working. Why do we need to have this huge space just for garbage? Why do we even have garbage? And this is the only place we have. We talk about throwing things away. Can you go on this picture on the right and show me where away is? There is no away, it's here. When you throw it, it's here. It's on our world. So there is no throwing things away. And this is another piece of the puzzle from Guatemala City. This is only 3 years ago. The waste dump collapsed, killing 4 people, and 24 more people went missing, and they don't know whether they lived or died. This is a huge social impact. These people were trying to make a living digging around the garbage, trying to find something that they could take from the garbage that maybe they could sell for 1 or 2 cents, enough to make their next meal. Is this the way we should be living on planet Earth in 2019? I don't think so. So clearly, this is literally, it's the life and death for some people, but it's also where things, all the things we have, go to die, right? It's the waste, it's the garbage, it's where we throw things. These are just indicators of the problem. But this is not really a new problem at all. We've been thinking about this and trying to do something about it for more than 30 years. This report came out 32 years ago from the United Nations. It's called Our Common Future, and it's where the term sustainable development was first invented. And that sustainable development is defined as development that meets the needs of today without compromising the needs of future generations to meet their needs. So basically, we can't have a big party today and enjoy ourselves and not care about what happens to our kids and our grandkids and all the generations that follow. And everybody reads this and says, yeah, this is a good concept. But the problem is it doesn't tell you how to do it. So it's a great idea, but the challenge is how do we do it? And this is what we've been trying to do. We've been trying to make this change for more than 30 years, but we still haven't found the way. We do have now 17 sustainable development goal areas to work on, so we're beginning to narrow it down and decide where to put our emphasis. But my goodness, it's 32 years, and we are still unsustainable. So here we have a picture of the glaciers, which are melting, and this is called calving, when a big chunk falls off. We're too slow. We're way too slow. So we have to take action, massive action, like right now, like yesterday, right, if that was possible. So it is a huge challenge. And when we look around, and I've worked for most of my career in and with businesses, what have businesses been doing to make a positive contribution? Well, before many of you were born, in 1992, there was the Rio Earth Summit. This is the first time that people across the world got together to talk about something other than economics. In the past, most of the global meetings were all about economics. This was a meeting about the environment. And so it was a very important moment to focus on this one topic. And at that meeting, a Swiss industrialist called Stefan Schmidheiny, he launched this book, which was sort of industry's response to these problems which were appearing. And another new word was formed, eco-efficiency. And it's all about trying to do more with less. Use less materials, but get more performance. And it's an important part of what we have to do. It's minimizing damage, it's avoiding bad things. And we talk about reducing our footprint on the earth. But as a strategy, it's insufficient on its own. What I've learned over my years of practice is this is the right thing to do, but it's not enough. And if we only try to do this, we won't succeed. And this is partly why, after 30 years, we're still not sustainable, because we've only had one strategy, and it's not enough on its own. And when you will always hear people talking about the footprint, our footprint on the earth, and they always assume it's negative. And so I want to challenge you all to start thinking differently from now. Our footprint can be positive. I actually want a big footprint on the earth, but I want it to be good, right? I want a good footprint, not a bad footprint. So why couldn't it be that instead of when I drove here in a taxi this morning, instead of every kilometer we drive, we pollute the atmosphere? Why can't we imagine and then design and create a future where every mile we drive, the earth gets better? Why can't we make oxygen every time we drive instead of making carbon dioxide? Well, only because nobody's put their mind to it and decided to do it. So I'm challenging you all, in whatever you end up doing in your work in the future, try to do something in whatever sphere it is, whatever company or organization you work for. Make this part of your mission. It doesn't matter if your company or your organization doesn't have it as its mission, it's your mission, and you work it into the agenda, whether they like it or not. This is what I did in business. I've worked for 20 years in a big major multinational company, and I've been doing this sort of work quietly behind the scenes, almost under the radar. And you can do that. You can have a mission and then make it. Over time, the companies and the organizations will see that it needs to be part of their mission too. And so if any of you ever have difficulty sleeping at night, you can get hold of an environmental report or a corporate sustainability report from a company and read it until you fall asleep, and it probably won't take you very long. But you will see in it charts like this. All the charts you see are saying, look, we're bad. There's something up here on this axis, or we're creating too much carbon dioxide, okay? So we're at this level now, and over time, each year we want to reduce, and we will set a goal that by 2030, we'll have reduced our carbon dioxide emissions by 50%. Good, I'm glad you recognize you're doing something that's not good, and you're going to do less of it. But think about that for a minute. Are they good now? No, they're just less bad. They're still bad, just less than they were before. They haven't talked about how do we get to good. And it sounds a little bit philosophical for early in the morning, but it's a really important concept. How do we get beyond just becoming less bad? And how do we start defining what good is? And as a scientist, it took me a long time. I was a little bit dumb, I'm sorry about that. But really, we've not been even, sorry. Come on, bear with me. I'll make this work one way or another. So being less bad is not being good. You're still bad, just less so. And this idea of eco-efficiency, efficiency isn't the only answer too. You'll hear, I had the pleasure of meeting the Minister and Vice Minister of Environment and Sustainability for Colombia 2 days ago. And they were reporting out on a new plan, a very ambitious plan on circular economy. And it's excellent. I'm so pleased that this is happening. But I kept hearing the word efficiency. And efficiency is important and it's part of the solution, but it's not the only thing. Imagine being efficient at the wrong thing. Imagine for a minute that I am, let's say, I'm a burglar and I'm going to come and rob your apartment. If I'm the most efficient burglar in Colombia, is that a good thing? No, I'm going to take more than anybody else. Right? So efficiency isn't necessarily good. It's what you do the efficiency on. You have to be effective first. You have to decide what the right thing to do is, and then once you've decided on that, then you can be efficient. So we keep jumping into efficiency as if it's a magic solution, but it isn't. It's part of the solution. But you have to decide what the right thing is before you become efficient. And this is where I was trying to get to with the chart. I've actually been drawing this chart. Everybody has been drawing these charts the wrong way. If something is negative, it should be below the line on the graph, below the horizontal axis. And so now less bad has a sort of positive trajectory towards the zero. Towards the zero. Let's get there again. Am I going the wrong way? Yes, I'm going. Come on, we can do this. There we go. It's going the right way towards the zero. And so you will hear people saying, oh, the goal is zero. We must be carbon zero, carbon neutral. And I say, please, don't be carbon neutral. Don't set a carbon neutral goal. I'm carbon. You're carbon. Do you want to be zero? I don't think so. You see, we oversimplify things and ask the wrong questions and set the wrong goal because we're not thinking enough. We have to use our brains a little bit more and be more precise with our language. Language is important, and I'm sorry I'm not speaking Spanish for you, but the choice of words is really important. And so the goal is zero. I don't think that's right. I don't get energized in the morning to wake up and come here to talk to you because my goal is zero. Right? I do it because I have something positive that I want to do, and I want you to do something positive too. And you see, when you draw the chart like this, you begin to see that half the chart is missing. So what is it that we're missing? And it's this idea of becoming more good, positive, or beneficial. And so I want to try and help transform all of the companies and organizations that are doing the right thing. Their intentions are good, but they need to go further and begin to look at this green zone. And yes, work on the red and reduce the bad, but please let's also move towards increasing the good. And basically our economic model is unsustainable. And this is the reason why for 32 years we haven't made the progress we thought we could. Because we didn't really think about the underlying system of the global economy. We take materials from the earth, we make things from them, we're sitting on chairs, we've got lights, we've got a room, we've got clothes, right? We make things and then we use them. Somebody sells them, we buy them, then we use them. And then at the end, they're thrown away. And then we go back to the beginning, we start over again, and we've got to go back to the earth and get more materials to make more things, to use more things. And so it keeps going on. And of course, this is okay for the companies who just want to sell you another pair of shoes or another carpet tile or another whatever it is you're buying. But this is driving unsustainability because we take things and we just throw it away. And actually also our concepts are simplistic. And it's okay to have a simple concept because it can help you to change your mind, change your thinking. But if we stay at that simple level, we don't get to the depth we need to really make the change happen. And so when we talk about sustainability, if you read anything about sustainability, you will often see a triangle with 3 E's, that not only do we have economy, but we also have to have environment, and we also have to have social equity. So it's trying to make us think, hey, think more than just money. Think about these other attributes as well. And sometimes people will say people, planet, and profit. Another way of saying the same things, economic, equity, and environment. And this is okay to change the switch in our heads to expand our ideas. But if we only stay at this level, we never get to that. So what do we do? And this is where I see a lot of people doing a lot of good talk about the concept, but not doing enough about the actualization of putting it into practice. And so we've got to change attitudes, but then we have to change behavior. And the behavior change is the hardest part. And let's just think about complexity just for a minute. Just think about life on Earth. We go a range of 24 orders of magnitude from a bacterium, which is 1/1 trillionth of a gram in weight, to a mammal as big as a blue whale, which is 100 million grams. That is enormous. We can't even conceive in our minds very easily of 24 orders of magnitude of that size. That's life on Earth. So if you're working in medicine, and I was at the University of Bosque, which of course has a big medical department, you're dealing with bacteria at this level. If you're learning about biology, you can be going up to this level. And we have everything in between. Life is very complex, and guess what? It's not linear. And this is another revelation that most people, even practitioners in this area, haven't really arrived at. These red and blue lines are non-linear lines. The black straight lines are linear thinking. So linear thinking is if I go from 100 to 200, I doubled. It's simple linear doubling. Most of nature is non-linear. There are 2 types of linearity. There's sublinear and superlinear, and we don't have time for a lecture on that today. But basically, I could double let me give you a quick example. We could double the number of people who live in Bogota, and it wouldn't take twice as much electricity to power the city, because there are scale effects. And that's why scale is important. We could actually power Bogota with twice as many people with about 3/4 the amount of energy, because of scale effects. And this is the sort of phenomenon that most people don't even know exists, but it's everywhere in nature. And if we don't understand it, how can we begin to solve these massive problems that we find ourselves facing? So this is why universities and getting to people like you is important for me, because we need to apply this level of knowledge and thinking widely in the world. But we have to also recognize that probably within the next few years, 80% of the people who live on Earth are going to live in cities. Already we have megacities like Beijing. And when I first went to Beijing, there were 3 ring roads around Beijing because they were growing and expanding. I think there are now 5. Can you imagine a city that keeps growing at such a pace that they need 5 circular ring roads to keep things moving? And look here, this is a nighttime picture from space of North and South America. We can see ourselves from space because of all the energy we're using. Even at night, all of these white dots are cities and towns. It just gives you an idea of how much energy we're using in the world. And we just take it for granted. We're here. You know, I powered up my phone this morning before I came. You're probably doing the same somewhere in the room. And we don't think about it. We don't think about it. If I only needed to exist, I need about 100 watts of energy a day. That's like a small light bulb. We are actually very, very efficient. We've evolved to be very, very efficient. I didn't need very much breakfast this morning to give me enough energy to be here and talk to you. And by lunchtime, I might need a little top up, but for now, I'm doing okay. But in reality, on average, across the world, we use 3,000 watts of energy per person. That's 300 times more than we need just to survive. And I have to apologize for coming from the US, where we're even more bad at using energy. We need 11,000 watts, 3.5 times more than the world average per person in the USA. We use energy without even thinking about it. And so, can you imagine now why we have more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and global warming than we need, or we should have? Because we're just using energy at the most amazing rate. So basically, all of this is a lead up to the fact that we need a new paradigm, a new way of thinking. And I've been teaching this for more than 20 years, and now it has a name. It has a name, we call it circular economy. And it's the idea, I'll define it in a minute, that there isn't one definition of circular economy that everybody agrees on. 2 years ago, I was in Medellin. I ran a panel at a conference, and we had an academic from Europe come and explain to us the results of his research, where he'd asked 114 people who were working on circular economy, what is it? And he got 114 different answers. So be very careful when you talk to people. This is back to language again. Don't assume that because you use the same two words together, economy is circular economy, that you're actually talking about the same thing. You imagine any two of those 114 people talking to each other about circular economy, but they each have a different idea of what it is. So we have to, again, think more deeply than just the words alone. Then last year, the WBCSD, World Business Council on Sustainable Development, they asked their members the same thing. What's circular economy? You all say you're working on it. They all agreed that it had something to do with materials. Some of them included something about water, some of them included something about energy, but nobody included all of them. So again, it shows you that there's no generic definition that we can all home in on. But it's okay to be a concept like this, but it does get important when we try to practice it. So this is a diagram from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in London. They took the work that I've been doing for 20 years with some other important practitioners, which we called cradle to cradle. It's the idea of bringing things back from the cradle, back in a circle to the cradle again. So these are the beginnings of the circle rather than the linear economy. And they've done a nice job of expanding it out and showing that here's the linear economy running down the middle, from taking materials from the earth to making things, and then us using them at the end and throwing them away. And they're explaining one of the key elements of cradle to cradle or circular economy, which is that we really have two cycles. There's the natural cycle on earth, which we look outside, and if the leaves are falling off the trees or the cherry blossoms, the blossoms come in the spring and they fall onto the floor, we don't look at the tree and say, oh, how wasteful. Look at that tree wasting all those blossoms or wasting all those leaves. We don't think like that. We think, how beautiful. How beautiful is that tree? That's in the good side. It's in the green side, right? It's beauty. Because we know in our hearts that nature is taking care of it, and all of those leaves and the blossoms, when they're on the ground, the molds and the bugs and the bacteria take all that material and bring it back in a circle through the soil, and it's available then for the roots to take up back again and grow a new tree or a new plant, and it's circulating the materials. This happens naturally in nature. Nature doesn't even have a concept of waste. We have the word waste, basuero. Nature, that word does not even exist in nature, because everything becomes food for something else, for another cycle. Even in The Lion King, right, we talk about the circle of life. This is natural. But we've invented all of these other crazy things like microphones and screens that I can move with my finger, and carpets and everything else around us. And these are more technical things. In a way, they're not natural. Of course, they're made of natural materials ultimately, but they have a different character to them. And so they have to cycle on this other half. We've got to invent a new cycle called the technical cycle, and we can imagine lots of different cycles. We could have a whole semester of lectures just on this one picture. Maybe you'll invite me to come do it, I don't know. So for me, when I look at everything that's going on, there are 6 critical things that need to be in a circular economy. So no matter whether you're one of the 114 or anyone else, for me, if your definition doesn't include something about these things, I think you've got something missing. It has to be about materials, because this is the big thing that we're missing. We're not dealing with materials, we're throwing things away. It's why Guatemala City has that huge dump. And you have the same here. You have waste. Where does your waste go from your apartment to your home? The same issue is everywhere in the world. It's not unique. We have to include energy and water, because essentially we use energy and we use water in everything we do. To move materials around, we use energy, and energy uses water, and water uses energy. It's all interconnected. So those who didn't put energy or water into the mix, they're just forgetting that it's there anyway, whether you care to recognize it or not. And I think we have to put the word sustainability back in. So for me, I always talk about a sustainable circular economy, because I can imagine creating a circular economy which is unsustainable. I could do it with non-renewable energy and keep putting more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. I could use poisonous materials in my products so that when you're sitting on them, you're getting toxified. We have to bring these other elements into the equation, and the way to do it, and I highlighted equity here because this was the presentation I gave at the university yesterday at a conference about social equity. This is how we push social equity back into the picture. We've got to get it in somehow into the agenda, and for me the best way to do it is everybody will always talk about economics first. Everything has to be profitable. The economy always comes first, no matter whether you like it or not. But by keep putting the word sustainability in there, which has the other E's of equity and environment in, we can legitimately keep talking about those other topics as well. And I think for me, this idea that we've not only to be less bad, but we have to get into this positive zone and start saying, what do we want more of? I think this is an important idea too. And then we have to apply it to all species. With the rainforest burning just to our south, we're losing a huge number of species. The rainforest that you have and that Brazil has is one of the most diverse places on Earth. And that's a repository of a treasure trove of things we haven't even begun to evaluate and investigate. And if we lose that, it's gone, never to come back. And so these are desperate times that we have to be dealing with. And the reason I focus a lot of my time on materials is because we keep forgetting to do it. And more than half of greenhouse gas emissions come from just moving stuff around. And again, most people don't think about it this way. And it reminded me, I was watching the tennis at Wimbledon in London about 2 months ago, and it reminded me of this work from a university in England from a few years ago. And I'm talking about a tennis ball. To make that tennis ball used to be made in the north of England, and when it was made, it was transported about probably 300 kilometers to London for them to play tennis. Seems easy enough. Some of the materials came from other parts of the world, so it wasn't a small footprint. Some of the materials were moved, but it was all made in England. Global economy, cheaper to make it in Indonesia. So now we're going to make the tennis balls for Wimbledon in Indonesia. And this chart basically shows you that there are 14 different movements of materials to make a tennis ball. And this is 81,000 kilometers. A tennis ball and the materials to make it travel 81,000 kilometers before they end up in London to have a game of tennis. Wow. Now, if that's what it takes for a simple tennis ball, imagine what it is for everything else. Just look around. We don't have to look any further than this room. How many millions of kilometers of travel and energy are being taken just to make the stuff that we take for granted and don't even think about? And you begin to see how we just go about our daily work, our daily lives, and all of this is happening in the background. just as part of global commerce. And yet these effects are happening in the world because of our choices. So we have to start asking different questions and making smarter choices. And we have to start saying to Nike or anybody else for that matter, hey, I'm pretty concerned about the way things are going in the world. What are you doing about circular economy? And if you ask that question to someone, use social media. It's easy enough to get in touch with people these days. And start asking these questions. I prefer to buy things that fit in the circular economy. Do yours fit in that economy? Yes or no? And most of them might say, what the hell are you talking about? I have no idea what this even is. Most people haven't even heard of it. But at least you made them aware of it. You were the first one to make them aware of it. And if enough people do that, maybe somebody inside that company will say, what is everybody talking about on social media about asking me if my products are circular? And then maybe they'll invite somebody like me to come and tell them what it is, and they'll start the change. But the change can come from us. So I could go on for a lot longer. The rest of this presentation was all about helping the dean and the rector at the University El Bosque to think about it, what it means for the campus. Imagine here, how are you practicing things like this? And what are you buying? What are you buying with your money in the university? How are you contributing to the red part and the green part of those charts? So it's a sort of a wake-up call. There's a lot behind this. This is obviously in 30 minutes just touching the surface. But I hope it's given you a little food for thought, and maybe you'll think a little bit more about your actually dumb smartphone. Because this phone doesn't know where to go when it's useless. It was never designed to go anywhere but to be thrown away. How crazy is that? There's gold in this phone. A very tiny amount, but there's gold. And if we add up all of our phones in this room, we've got a little bit more than just a tiny amount. We've got a slightly bigger amount. And why are we wasting all this stuff? They're not designing things to flow in a circular economy, and they need to. Thank you very much.
Thank you on behalf of the university. Ahora es la hora de si tenemos alguna pregunta, y espero que sí. No? Okay. I have a personal question, and it's, I'm an anthropologist. My background's a little bit different, but we see that it's very difficult to implement. What would you suggest to our students to be able, from their perspective, to improve it? La pregunta que le he hecho es, desde la óptica de nosotros como estudiantes o como miembros de la universidad, ¿qué consejo nos podría dar para realmente aplicar el concepto de circularidad?
So first of all, I would say thank you for being here and taking some time out of your day to listen. Because I think this first level of understanding that this even is an issue is the first step. We need to get a lot more people understanding that this is an issue and that we have to do something about it. And it is difficult on an individual level to say, well, I'm only one person, what can I do? Well, with social media, like I said, you can do more things. You can make your voice heard. Be a darn nuisance, right? And ask questions. It's important to you. And if you're a young person here, it's really important to you because this is the rest of your life. If we're talking about some of these effects being 12 and 20 years from now being catastrophic, you're still a young person in that time frame. This needs to be fixed. And I think you then do have to transition to the second part, which is more difficult, which is the behavior change. It's attitudes first and then behavior. And I think there is just a massive need to get the word out. And it's hard for me to stand here when I live in the USA, and I don't want to get political at this time of day. I'd rather do it over a few beers or a glass of wine with you, and then we can really talk about what moves the world. But I'm happy that your government is paying attention. I've got some suggestions if they want to listen to me about how they can go even further and faster and better. And I was happy to meet the minister, and maybe next time I'm here next month, I might get a meeting and we might have it start a dialogue. But I think this is what it is. It's start talking about it and then saying, well, how do we change it? I don't have all the answers. I'm not coming here with the answers. I'm not coming here to tell you. I could talk for the rest of the day about things that are happening in Holland and Spain and somewhere else. But I would only do that in order to get you to put your own context on this. I started by saying place is important, all sustainability is local. I'm headed to Medellin this afternoon. Next month I'll be back in Cali. And sustainability in Cali and Medellin is different than the sustainability here because they're different places with different sensibilities. And so I'm not here to give you a prescriptive answer. I'm here to stimulate you, to say, okay, so what sort of meetings do we need to have? How do we get designers together in Colombia so that we can start designing this way with our sensibility, with our frame of reference, and do it from within? Don't look for anybody else to do it for you or bring it to you. I'm happy to bring you some of the ideas and the experience I have, but you have to do it. And I think that's my admonition is, how do we get groups together like this, then take it from a listening session into, okay, let's now take another step and have a different style of meeting where we start actually asking that question, saying, okay, so what can we do? I don't have prescriptive answers. I'm just inviting you to the dance.
Yeah, please.
What is the strategy to achieve empathy into groups interesting in a circular economy?
So, because the world runs on money, right? Economics drives everything. I tend to take a sort of stealth approach. When I worked in this major business, I was tasked with the responsibility of dealing with some of these questions, but I didn't really have a budget. I couldn't spend a lot of money to make it happen. And the CEO of the company didn't tell all the other employees, hey, you've got to listen to Ken and do what he says. So I didn't have any real authority to make any change happen. But I did have the power of persuasion. And so I would look and find what was making them make their decisions. So I would find somebody who was making a new product, and I would say, if I can help you make 2% more profit margin on your new brand you're going to launch, would that be of interest? And of course, money drives everything. So I said, yeah, how am I going to make 2% more profit than the way I'm doing it now? And then I stealthily brought in all of these environmental things, and he'd made the change because it was saving some money and making more profitable. But I was getting my environmental agenda met at the same time. So it's understanding the people you're working with and use the economy as a way to get all the other things in through the back door. That would be my idea. I can tell you, honestly, I've saved many tens of millions of dollars for the company I worked with. And I did it all based on environmental thinking. It's basically a question of design. Probably the most important word I could give you apart from circular economy, sustainable, I would add the word design. We have to redesign everything. We have to redesign the products. We have to redesign the systems that they flow in. I'm looking around at some nice colored sweaters. The green sweater, the red sweater, the orange sweater. Do you even know what made that color? Do you know whether that chemical was even tested to be safe against your skin? The answer is it probably never was. So there's so much depth to this that that's why I say I could teach for 5 years probably and still not cover the topic. We have to understand the materials we're using, how we're using them, and then what we do with them next. There has to be a next use. But use the economics as a way to get what you want on social equity and on environment. And that's why I come back to sustainability, because it's the place where all three things coexist.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Yeah, please, Avi.
Gracias, profe. Buenos días. A mí me gustaría saber si al interior de estas organizaciones se ha planteado en algún momento realmente la necesidad por mirar el tema de la población, la densidad poblacional y si es necesario realmente reducir la cantidad de gente que vive realmente en el mundo en este momento, porque finalmente lo que viene mostrándose durante los últimos 50 años es que la población viene creciendo a tasas muy altas y indiscutiblemente pues a mayor población, mayor demanda por recursos naturales y pues por productos y por incrementar la economía. Entonces me gustaría saber pues qué piensan el invitado.
Okay, the question is, according to these series of companies, he's worried about the population increase. And obviously there's a direct ratio between the larger the population and the more demand for products and so forth. His question is what do you consider in this case? Do we reduce the human population as a factor? That's called war.
Oh, well, how many more hours do you have? My view on population is this. I think we have to educate people, and I think the record is pretty clear that when people are educated about birth control and things of that nature, on average, the more educated people are, the smaller the size of the family. So I think there's an element of education which can help people understand. I understand the question well because my father had seven sisters and my mother had 3 brothers and 4 sisters. So I come from a large family. But for my generation, there were 2 of us. So this is an example of the change from one generation to the next. So I think some amount of education can be instrumental. But fundamentally, from a social equity point of view, I believe that every life is beautiful. And I think we have to not get into this business of saying, we have to reduce the population. No, when someone is born, they deserve to have the best life possible. They deserve to have the most opportunity they can ever have and become the beautiful person they were designed to be. And I'm getting choked up because it is an emotional subject. And it brings me back to language again. If you look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, one of them is called Sustainable or Responsible Production and Consumption. And I haven't spoken about consumption so far, and there's an element of it in your question because the more people, the more consumption. I disagree completely. And I disagree completely that the word consumption should be used because we're not consumers. Please don't let people keep telling you you're a consumer and you have to consume less. Because actually you're not really consuming most things. I'm not consuming this microphone. I'm not consuming my cell phone. I actually own the cell phone, and that's crazy in and of itself, because why do I want to own 276 molecules of something or other? I just want to be able to use some apps and make a phone call. I want the service of what we now call a smartphone that's really a dumb phone. So why can't I just have an agreement with Samsung or Apple to say, look, I'm prepared to pay, I don't know, whatever the number, $30 a month to use the services of this thing you're making. But I don't want to own the molecules because now when I want to upgrade to the Apple 256 or whatever is coming next, I own this. What do I do with it? It was never designed to go anywhere or do anything, and I hate it because it's so wasteful. Right? And if they have the concept of that I don't own it, but they own it, then maybe they get it back, and so they have to take responsibility for what they made. And right now, you can't even take this apart to reuse the pieces in it. But if we change this from being consumption to use, then, okay, we're on a trajectory to go from 7.9 billion people now to maybe 9 billion by 2050. That's going to mean we use more resources, not that we consume more resources. And this is exactly why the circular piece is important, because maybe if we start getting things back and reusing them, maybe we'll have enough materials to still make it work with 9 billion. But it certainly won't work with 9 billion if we keep in the linear flow. So this is why the fundamental shift has to happen in the production system, and that we find ways to collect things at the end of their use and bring them back and reutilize the materials. The materials in here don't have to come back and be another phone. They can just be materials that can become a washing machine or a car or whatever. But please don't keep throwing them away. Because you're right, with the trajectory to have more people on the planet, then the linear economy just won't work. It'll be even more unsustainable than it already is. But don't think of yourself as a consumer. Become a user, and that's another question you can ask. You can say to Apple, hey, I'm tired of buying your phones. I like the technology. I like the uses I can make of it, but I don't want to own the molecules. Please, give it to me in a different way. And please, you take responsibility for all the things that are in here and make another good use of them when you've sold me on the next version.
Ok, ¿tenemos alguna otra pregunta? No, por favor, un aplauso para nuestro lector. Thank you very much. Oh, excuse me, we do have a question.
En algunas asignaturas hemos en algún momento tocado el tema de la economía azul y de diferentes proyectos y conceptos que ha manejado Gunter Pauli. ¿Cómo podríamos relacionar de la mejor forma, de una manera cooperativa, el tema de la economía azul con la economía circular?
His question has to do that we're starting to talk about blue economy, and he would like to know how can you put together or find a midpoint between circular economy and blue economy.
Well, because we're now paying more attention to all of these topics, because global warming and other things are so urgent, we have new concepts appearing. So I'm talking about the circular economy. I would just ask you, when you talk about the blue economy, to bear in mind that it is the same issue as the definitions of circular economy. Gunter Pauli, as you said, has the book of the blue economy. But many other people are using the blue economy in a different way, just to talk about the oceans and shorelines. And so if you're talking, as I was a month ago in Barbados, we were talking about the blue and circular economy for that same reason, that you need to integrate all of these different ideas. And there, the blue economy was all about ecotourism and the fact that they have so many people visiting the island and fishing. And so blue economy has more than one definition too, so just remember that. And also I'm hearing more about the orange economy here. I don't know how many more colors of economy we will need, but I would say that no matter which color you want to talk about, always do it with a sustainable circular economy. For me, sustainable circular economy is the overarching way in which we have to change the global flow of business. And then no matter whether you define a blue economy this way or that way, or an orange economy or whatever it might be, please still do it sustainably and do it in a manner that's circular. Let me give you one example. I keep finding people telling me how good it is that they are reducing their carbon dioxide emissions. Great, you're being less bad. Keep on being less bad. And then they tell me, well, I'm also trying to become more good, and I'm beginning to move my energy from non-renewable energy to renewable energy. And we're going to put solar panels on our roofs, and we're going to put windmills up on our factories, and we're going to move to renewable clean energy. And I say, great, I'm so happy you're doing that. But guess what? None of those things, neither the solar panels nor the windmills, are designed in the circular economy. So imagine we put solar panels on every roof in the city. 20 years from now, when those technologies are outdated or they're not working, what are we going to do with all the millions of solar panels? What's going to happen in 15 years when the blades of the windmills, which are made of carbon fiber, start to fail and need to be replaced? Are we just going to throw them away? Right? So no matter which part of the economy you're working on, whatever color, whatever shape, size, or element you want to describe, we have to do it in a sustainable, circular way. So I would say the integration is always do it sustainable and circular, whatever it is.
Do we have alguna otra pregunta? Okay. Sorry.
Good morning. Mi cuestión, mi pregunta es, ¿cómo la economía circular afecta los impuestos y los precios de producción?
Her question is, how does circular economy affect prices of production and taxes?
It affects my ears. Well, taxes is just is the government responsibility. So there is no tax implication if they don't put one on. You know what I mean? So it's a concept that is independent of taxes, unless a government says, "Look, I'm going to force you to move in this direction, and I'm going to do it by imposing some tax that taxes the bad things and advantages the good things." A government could decide to do that. So there could be a tax mechanism to accelerate progress. But in and of itself, as a concept, there's no taxation unless a government chooses to apply it. What was the other part of the question? Taxes and cost of production. In my experience, the projects I've worked on average, I've been able to save 20% of the cost. So my experience is that it is possible to save money by thinking this way. But like anything else, it's not automatic. You know, some companies I work with, they might have made a product that's been evolved over a period of time through many generations. Like, say, the iPhone went from the 1 to the 2 to the 3, and at each time it got more complicated. At a certain point, some of these products get so complicated that if you say, you know, time out, let's step back again, let's get out of whatever happened before, whatever is now, doesn't matter. We're going to redesign this and we're going to start from scratch. And traditionally, when you're designing something, there are 3 parameters: cost, performance, and aesthetics. And your question is about the cost part. So if I'm at Nike and I'm asked to design some new sneakers, you know, I'm going to have to design it to a price point for making it, because I have in mind the price I'm going to sell it at and make a profit. It has to perform in a certain way. I have to be able to run or, you know, wear the shoes for a certain amount of time. And of course, for Nike, design is important. So the aesthetic, the look, is maybe even the most important. And these are the traditional design requirements, but I would add in ecological or sustainable intelligence, that we have to do it, make sure we do it with social equity in mind so that we don't have child labor, which they used to do. And we have to do it understanding the materials and making sure they're in a sustainable circular economy. But by going back to the beginning again and redesigning, I can often simplify the elements of the design, still meeting the cost, performance, and aesthetics that are always there, also doing it in an ecologically intelligent way. And by simplifying and looking at it from this other perspective, I can often save money. It doesn't happen all the time, but if you make that part of your design assignment, then you keep going at it until you find a way to do it. Some new technologies might be more expensive initially, and they take some time to scale up to a level at which the costs come down. So there's no magic answer, but if you want to do it in a way to reduce costs, there are ways you can set that as part of your goal. But it doesn't have to be more expensive. I could give you another example, but it would take 20 minutes to explain.
¿Alguien más? Okay.
Good morning. I know you have a really deep approach into the issue, but I would like to ask you if you can give us a single tip for people like us to put into practice, like in the next hour.
Away from that speaker because it goes wild.
In the next hour, I would say use your dumb smartphone, go on Google and learn a lot more about circular economy. Just put in the word circular economy and have at it. There's a lot of stuff happening, and you can expand your knowledge very quickly. I'll give you one example. Let me think of a couple of examples. Mud Jeans, okay? If you want to look at Mud, M-U-D, Jeans, it's a company in the Netherlands. There's a lot of experimentation going on. Some things will work, some things won't work, and in the end we see what is able to continue. But right now, if you're wearing blue jeans, I can't quite see whether you are, but maybe you are, Mud Jeans won't sell you jeans. They will lease you or rent you jeans. They will send them to you in the mail. But when the jeans arrive at your home, they will arrive with a package, a return package with their address on it. And when you've worn the jeans and they're no longer usable, you will put it in the package and you'll send it back to them. They want to work in a circular economy and they want to get the jeans back. Now that's not available right now, probably here in Bogota, so I can't have you do that in the next hour. But it's an example of what you will find, lots of experiments starting as people begin to hear people like me talking about this. Some people become very entrepreneurial, and so new companies are forming to try out different ways of doing this. If we'd continued on in the presentation and I had 3 more hours, there are some slides about the 5 business models that are circular. These are business models that are a little different than the ones we're used to. If somebody in here has some money or you have access to some money, I will set up a tool for you so that you could move into the sharing economy. You've probably used Airbnb or maybe Uber, which is part of the sharing economy. Somebody owns a car and they're prepared to share a ride with you for a certain amount of money. Airbnb, I've got an Airbnb in Medellin I'm going to in a few hours, where I have a small apartment that I have for the next few days. It's part of sharing. I'm sharing the apartment that somebody else owns. We can do this with everything. You could do this with this room. Whoever owns this room in the university, you could say, hey, we only use this room between 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 at night. Does anybody want to use this room from 6 o'clock in the evening through till 5 o'clock in the morning? Somebody wants to do something useful in the night, and you could rent out the room if you wanted to. You're sharing, it's an asset. The university has an asset that you could choose to share or not. Well, I have a tool now that I'm deploying in different places in some cities. I'm going to be discussing it in Cali next month. And it's a tool that, just like you would go on your app for Uber to get the car to come, you can look and see what somebody else owns that you might want to borrow. The camera that is filming me right now may not be used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That camera could be on this app saying, hey, if you want some video services in these other days and other evenings, it's available, and here's the price. So this is a new business model. It's the sharing economy. It's one of the 5. So things like this are happening. If you just start searching on circular economy is circular, and you'll start finding things. That's probably what you can do in the next hour.
¿Tenemos alguna otra pregunta? Nadie, okay, muchas gracias. Yeah.
I just thought of one more thing, a little bit of self-promotion. I've just started a new podcast. It's called The Circularity Edge. I'll be recording a new episode while I'm in Medellin over the weekend on what's been happening in the last 3 days here in Bogota. So if you're a podcast listener, you can look for The Circularity Edge or Circularity Edge. It's on Apple and Google Play. So if you want to hear me keep talking about different things around this, you can sign up for that too.
Thank you very much. Resumen rápido, hay un nuevo podcast, Circularity Edge. Va a tener una serie sobre lo que está haciendo en Medellín la semana entrante, mañana, perdón. Okay. ¿No tenemos más preguntas? Ok, una vez un aplauso, mil gracias. Y les quiero recordar que esto es Café sin fronteras, por lo tanto a la salida tenemos una opción de café o algo frío, por favor sigan, escojan uno. Muchas gracias por haber venido, tengan un muy buen día. Thank you very much, we appreciate you coming.